Chapter 1, Miss Smith, your condition is delicate. Terminating the pregnancy abruptly could be life-threatening. You must consider this carefully. Thank you, Dr. Linda. I'll think about it. I'll definitely be back for a follow-up in 7 days. Eleanor Smith carefully folded the report, placed it in her handbag, and walked into the Scott Corporation headquarters, the CEO's office. On the pristine white sheets, Eleanor Smith's dark hair was spread out. Ethan Scott's eyes burned like fire as he kissed her with a devouring force, not stopping until her lips were stained with blood. Everything returned to calm. Eleanor buttoned the last button of her blouse. Last night, several media outlets reported rumors about you and Miss Jones. I'll contact the PR department to handle it immediately. No need. Eleanor turned back in surprise, meeting Ethan Scott's indifferent gaze. It's true, I'm getting engaged. Eleanor's face paled. She opened her mouth, but for a moment couldn't say a word. She gently touched her abdomen, her head bowing involuntarily. Ethan leaned against the headboard, leisurely admiring her distress. He even secretly hoped to see the usually poised woman have a breakdown, to scream and cry over this. But Eleanor just took a deep breath. When she looked up again, her expression was as calm as ever. Understood, Mr. Scott. Ethan's gaze instantly became deep and unpredictable. Eleanor left the CEO's office and went straight to the restroom. She was not as calm as she appeared. She needed to hide in a stall to process her emotions. After a long while, just as she was about to leave, she heard voices from outside. Heard the news? Mr. Scott's getting engaged. Special Assistant Smith must be furious. Serves her right. We've worked our tails off for years. Why should she get to work right beside the CEO the moment she arrives? Her job is the easiest, she just has to lie there. Eleanor pushed open the stall door. The conversation stopped abruptly. Caught gossiping, the women stammered, Miss Smith, excuse me. Eleanor gave them a cold glance, washed her hands, and left. She had heard such talk ever since Ethan promoted her to special assistant upon her arrival at the company. She had long grown used to it. Back at her desk, Eleanor heard the office intercom buzz. Mr. Scott, a Miss Jones is here, claiming to be your fiancé. Eleanor froze, then heard Ethan say, send her right up. Eleanor couldn't help but look at him, but all she could see was his cold profile. A few minutes later, a fashionably dressed girl with exquisite makeup appeared in the CEO's office. Ethan wrapped one arm around Felicity Jones's slender waist, his face full of adoration. Ethan, dear, this must be Miss Smith. Felicity, from the moment she entered, had been sizing Eleanor up. Miss Smith is truly beautiful. I hear your mother also spent her nights entertaining men. It's no wonder you're following in her footsteps. Felicity's words were like a sharp blade piercing Eleanor's body. Unbearable memories resurfaced, making her chest tighten and a cold sweat break out. Eleanor looked at Ethan in shock. He curled his lip into a smile. Let's not bring up such sordid matters. With that, Ethan didn't give her another glance, leading Felicity away. After watching them leave, Eleanor could no longer hold herself together. Her hands trembling, she opened a drawer, took out a medicine bottle from the very back, hesitated for a long time, and then put it back. Chapter 2, it was nearly midnight, and Eleanor Smith was tossing and turning, unable to sleep. She thought bitterly, Ethan is getting engaged. This child won't be welcomed either, will it? Just then, her phone rang. It was Ethan. Come pick me up at the Riverside Club. With that single sentence, Ethan hung up. Eleanor sighed, got dressed, and left. Half an hour later, she pushed open the door to a private room. Dressed in a black tracksuit, her simple makeup couldn't hide her beauty. Someone let out a strange laugh. Mr. Scott, you're a lucky man. How come I don't have such a charming assistant at my service from day to night? Wild laughter erupted, but Eleanor acted as if she hadn't heard, walking straight to Ethan. Mr. Scott, I'm here to pick you up. Before Ethan could speak, a man next to him spoke up. Mr. Scott, let's add another clause to our deal. We'll need Miss Smith to accompany us for the entire process. What do you say? At these words, Eleanor's body trembled slightly. The man's intentions couldn't be clearer. Ethan raised an eyebrow. If Mr. King wants her, feel free to take her. As he spoke, Ethan pulled Eleanor over. He caressed her cheek, but his tone was ice cold. But only after I'm tired of her. Eleanor's heart felt as if it had plummeted into a bottomless abyss, but she forced herself to remain composed, managing a smile. Gentlemen, Mr. Scott is drunk. I need to take him home. Tonight's expenses will be billed to the Scott Corporation. Seeing her so calm, the men were slightly surprised. Elinor moved to support Ethan, and he didn't refuse. Just as they were about to leave, Ethan received a call from his father, Arthur Scott. Elinor tactfully stepped aside. "Miss Smith, how much does Ethan pay you a month?" Elinor turned to see Walter King standing behind her, his casual attire unable to hide his air of wealth. Elinor put on a mask-like smile. "Mr. King." Walter King reached out and grabbed her shoulder. "Why not come with me? How about $500,000 a month?" The grip on her shoulder was immense, as if trying to crush her. Elinor couldn't break free. She looked up, her bright, star-like eyes holding a hint of mockery. "Mr. King, $500,000 a month isn't enough to keep me." Something stirred within Walter King, and his grip loosened. Just as Elinor was about to push him away, Ethan's angry voice rang out, "Elinor, get over here." Hearing this, Walter King smiled and let go. Inside the villa, Ethan's face was terrifyingly cold. "Come here." Though frightened, Elinor carefully walked over. The next second, Ethan pinned her against the wall. "What, you see I'm getting engaged and you're already looking for your next meal ticket?" As he questioned her, Ethan wrapped his arms around her waist, trapping her. "Mr. Scott, it's not what you think, I already refused him." Ethan had lost all patience. He kissed Elinor's lips almost aggressively, silencing all her explanations. Their eyes met, and Elinor found herself sinking into Ethan's deep gaze. The atmosphere was thick with ambiguous intimacy. She even considered revealing the secret of her pregnancy. But Ethan quickly looked away, his breath smelling of alcohol as he gave her a light peck on the lips. "When we get married, Felicity wants you to be her bridesmaid." Elinor froze, the image of Felicity and Ethan's intimacy flashing through her mind. She gave a bitter, helpless smile. "I never learn, do I? A little bit of sweetness from Ethan and I forget my place." A sharp pain on her neck snapped Elinor back to reality. Ethan grew impatient. "Distracted, Before Elinor could react, he lifted her into his arms and carried her to the bedroom. The next day, when Elinor woke up, the space beside her was cold. She touched the sheets, which held no trace of warmth, and suddenly felt a sharp pain in her chest. Chapter 3, Elinor Smith took the morning off. She sat in the leather chair of the psychologist's office, her face etched with endless bitterness. "Doctor, the medication you prescribed for me. Can I take it while I'm pregnant?" "Absolutely not. With your condition, having a child is not advisable." A sharp pain pierced Elinor's heart. After a long pause, she spoke, her voice dissipating like the wind. "I understand." As soon as she returned to the company, Elinor was summoned to the CEO's office. Without looking up, Ethan pushed a file across his desk. "The Greenland project, you'll oversee it personally." That project was a complete mess, with chaotic accounts and poor quality construction. Anyone who touched it now would get their hands dirty. Elinor's hand paused, but she responded calmly, "All right." That afternoon, she organized a meeting with the relevant personnel. It took 10 minutes for everyone to arrive. Elinor scanned their faces, each one wore a look of indifference. For the sake of the group's overall development, the subsidiary was being streamlined. Capable employees were transferred, leaving behind a group of old-timers just waiting for their severance packages to be paid out so they could leave. No one was motivated to advance the project. She spoke coolly. "It's been 2 months and the project has made no progress. Do you have anything to report?" The man in charge, Deputy Manager Duncan, sneered. "There's not a single cent in the accounts. What do you expect us to use to move forward?" "Yeah, Miss Smith, you can't take your bad mood out on us just because Mr. Scott is getting engaged." Elinor looked coldly at the project manager. "My personal life is not for you to discuss. As for where the money in the accounts went, that's what you need to explain to the company. Otherwise, it won't be as simple as a dismissal. The Scott Corporation will take legal action if necessary." "Miss Smith, don't talk down to us. Aren't you so famous in the industry? Forcing us out is no great feat. I'd like to see how you bring this project back from the dead. You're just something Ethan Scott got tired of playing with." With that, the deputy manager led the others out of the room with a swagger. Even if her heart were forged from steel, it couldn't withstand such words. After a moment, she turned and went into the restroom. Elinor looked at her pale reflection in the mirror, a voice seeming to echo in her ears. "Is it worth stopping your medication for the child's sake?" Her hand unconsciously rested on her flat abdomen. In a daze, she seemed to hear a faint but powerful heartbeat. Another voice whispered in her ear, "He will be your only family. Even if everyone in this world despises you, he will love you." Eleanor forced a curve onto her lips. Returning to her office, as if having made a firm decision, she took all the medicine bottles from her drawer and threw them into the trash. Just then, a hand suddenly reached from behind her and picked up a medicine bottle. Eleanor turned her head, and for a moment, she couldn't breathe. Amitriptyline hydrochloride. Ethan slowly read the words on the bottle, his eyes darkening. "You're taking antidepressants?" Chapter 4, Eleanor never imagined that Ethan would know what the medication was for. She stammered, still trying to think of an explanation. A sneer appeared on Ethan's lips. "What, you find out I'm getting engaged and now you're putting on a show, afraid I'll dump you?" Ethan casually put the bottle down. "If you knew it would come to this, why did you even bother?" Eleanor knew what Ethan was referring to. The memory brought a sudden, sharp pain to her chest. She quickly made an excuse and fled the office. After work, as Eleanor left the company building, she saw an unexpected person. Her mother, Helen, walked up to her, holding out her right hand, palm up. "Give me money," Eleanor frowned. "Didn't I just transfer you money last week? What good was that little bit of money? I lost it all in a few rounds of poker with Mrs. Davis and the others. I don't have any money. My salary doesn't come in until next month." Seeing Eleanor's refusal, Helen's expression changed. "How did I give birth to such a useless thing? Back then, I told you to ask Ethan's father for more money, but you refused, making me live this hard life with you." Hearing her mother bring up the past, Eleanor's face instantly turned cold. "My biggest regret is using that money to bail you out of the casino." "How dare you talk back to me?" Helen flew into a rage and slapped Eleanor hard across the face. The blow sent Eleanor stumbling, and the contents of her bag scattered across the ground. Helen's sharp eyes immediately spotted the pregnancy report. She was instantly ecstatic. "You're pregnant, it's Ethan's, isn't it?" That greedy look in her eyes sent a chill down Eleanor's spine. She frantically picked up the report, stuffed it back into her bag, and said coldly, "It's not, I'll give you the money. Now leave." Helen gave her a thoughtful look and, surprisingly, smiled. All right, I'm leaving." Watching her mother's retreating back, the unease in Eleanor's heart grew. But she had no energy to dwell on it. For the next week, she was constantly trying to secure investment for the Greenland project. One day, Eleanor ran into an acquaintance at the Enterprise Tower. "Mr. King." Eleanor warily kept her distance from Walter King, not wanting any more misunderstandings. Seeing her deliberately keeping her distance, Walter King smiled and said, "I've heard about the Greenland project. If you need help, I'd be happy to provide it. Of course, on the condition that you agree to come work for me." Eleanor didn't want to say more and turned to leave, but Walter King reached out and blocked her path. "Ethan is getting married. He won't care about you anymore. Who you're with doesn't matter. At least with me, you won't be a tool to be used and thrown away." A pang of pain shot through Eleanor's heart and her nails dug into her palms. She defiantly lifted her head, her dark eyes cold. "Mr. King, thank you for your concern, but it's not needed." Walter King watched her leave, his interest growing stronger. The next day, Eleanor finally secured the investment. A weight was lifted from her shoulders. She returned to the company with the proposal. As she stepped into the office, she saw Ethan sitting in her chair. Eleanor froze, then spoke. "Mr. Scott, the project investment is secured. Here is the proposal for your signature." Ethan took the proposal, but suddenly sneered. "The investment, what did you trade for it?" Eleanor's heart felt like it had been seared by a hot iron. She said in a choked voice, "I didn't." "Walter King approaches you 1 minute, and the next you've secured the funding. You call that nothing?" The disgust in Ethan's eyes was unconcealed. "Eleanor, are you that desperate for a man? I'm not." A feeling of suffocation spread through her body. Eleanor could only repeat those 2 words. But Ethan didn't believe her at all. The veins on his hand bulged as he threw the proposal down. "From now on, this project will be handled by Vice President Davis. I don't want to see you right now." The scattered papers fluttered and brushed against Eleanor. They didn't hurt, but each sheet felt like a cut to her heart. Chapter 5, there were only 2 days left until Eleanor's follow-up appointment. In the days she'd been off her medication, her mental state had deteriorated. If I give birth to this child, can I really give him a happy life? Alina buried her head in her arms in agony, desperately hoping Ethan would appear and offer some comfort, even just a brief hug. But Ethan never came. Instead, his father, Arthur Scott, sought her out. Alina looked nervously at the man sitting before her. Arthur Scott's expression was calm. He even ordered a warm milk for Alina. I heard from your mother. You're carrying Ethan's child and don't care about a title. But you need to be clear. The marriage alliance between the Scotts and the Joneses is inevitable. Nothing can stop it. With every word Arthur Scott spoke, Alina felt as if she were being strangled, struggling desperately but unable to speak. Alina, our family won't treat you unfairly. Take the money and leave. After all, this isn't the first time you've done something like this. Alina heard the sarcasm in his voice. 5 years ago, to save her mother from her gambling debts, and more importantly, for Ethan's sake, she had taken $3 million from Arthur Scott and left the love of her life, who was then in a coma after a car accident. When she met Ethan again, the lover whose eyes were once filled with love had become cold and ruthless. Alina Smith, since you're willing to abandon everything for money, then I'll just buy your services day and night. Alina was lost in painful memories, her expression dazed. Arthur Scott didn't care what she was thinking. He placed a check on the table and stood up. Take it and leave Ethan's life. After Arthur Scott left, Helen walked in from outside. She picked up the check from the table, her eyes lighting up. $10 million, I can't believe this child is worth so much. Alina watched her mother's greedy, ugly smile, and her eyes slowly turned red. I told you long ago, nothing is more important than money. You're finally more useful than your deadbeat father. As Helen spoke, she tried to stuff the check into her own bag. The next second, Alina snatched the thin piece of paper and, to Helen's horrified gaze, tore it in half. Helen almost went insane. I don't want it, Alina said, tearing the check into smaller pieces. Helen couldn't stop her in time, her eyes red with anger. She raised her hand and slapped Alina twice. What right do you have to be so high and mighty you look down on me, but who looks up to you? At least I don't let men take advantage of me for free. Helen grabbed her bag and stormed out. You bad omen, her mother's words hit Alina harder than the slaps. After the chaotic scene ended, Alina walked home on unsteady feet. She saw the Greenland project's deputy manager, Lewis Duncan, waiting for her. With the exposure of the fraudulent accounts and tax evasion, the subsidiary's staff had been suspended and were under investigation. Lewis Duncan had gone from a business elite to a disgraced outcast. Seeing Alina, he immediately walked up, a fake smile on his face. Miss Smith, you brought the Greenland project back from the dead by securing that investment. I haven't congratulated you yet. Alina could tell there was a hidden meaning in his words. Mr. Duncan, I don't need your thanks. Please move. The fake smile on Lewis's face froze. You tramp, I was with Mr. Scott SR. Building this company over 20 years ago, I'm one of the old guard. You just slept your way to your position next to Ethan Scott. And you dare to act all high and mighty in front of me? The more Lewis spoke, the angrier he got. He suddenly pulled a short knife from his waist, its blade glinting coldly. Alina Smith, I hate that cold look on your face more than anything. I'll slash your face and see how you climb the ladder then. With that, he raised the sharp knife to stab Alina. Alina panicked. Just as she was about to be injured, a strong arm pulled her into a warm embrace. Then, with a thud, Lewis Duncan was kicked to the ground. Lewis Duncan, you dare touch my person. Ethan looked at him as if he were looking at a dead man. Lewis was terrified by the undisguised ferocity in his eyes. Mr. Scott, please let me explain. Ethan didn't listen, having his men drag Lewis away to the police station. Still shaken, Alina tried to pull away from Ethan's embrace. Mr. Scott, thank you. Hearing this, Ethan leaned in slightly, his arms tightening around Alina's waist, his eyes filled with an unreadable emotion. Come home with me. Chapter 6 on the way, Alina debated whether to reveal her pregnancy. She carefully glanced at Ethan, and after much thought, finally mustered the courage. Mr. Scott, I have something to tell you. Before she could finish, Ethan's phone rang, automatically connecting to the car's Bluetooth. It was Ethan's childhood friend, Charlie Harris. You've really done it this time, Ethan. You're getting engaged, and I'm the last to know. You're a real pal. Ethan was noncommittal. Are you calling just to chew me out? Of course not. I wanted to ask, are you really serious about this, Miss Jones? What do you mean? There was a few seconds of silence on the phone. Charlie's voice sounded a bit hesitant. So, what about Alina Smith? Ethan's tone deepened. What are you trying to say? Don't get mad, but Walter King from Jaya Group has approached me several times. He's really taken with Alina. I figured since you two are breaking up anyway, I'd agree to help him. Ask. The air in the car turned frigid. A flash of red crossed Ethan's eyes. What's he offering in exchange? Hearing this, Alina, in the passenger seat, looked down at her abdomen, her face deathly pale. The sudden call had ruined Ethan's mood. He dropped Alina off at the villa and left without a word. Alina could only wait for him in the living room. Hours passed, and she started to drift off. But her sleep was restless, filled with fragmented dreams. In her dream, she was back in her student days. Ethan was holding her hand, walking on campus. The young man suddenly took out a ring and proposed, "Alina, marry me." Just as she, lost in the sweetness of the moment, was about to say yes, her mother and Ethan's father rushed in and pulled them apart. She cried out Ethan's name, and he slowly turned back. As his gaze grew colder, she felt herself sinking into an abyss. Alina woke with a jolt at the same time. She heard the front door open. Ethan, reeking of alcohol, suddenly embraced her. The warm, moist breath on her skin made her own breath catch. She forced herself out of the intoxicating moment, pressing against Ethan's hand as he was about to make a move. "We can't," she whispered. Ethan stopped, looking down at her. The overhead light cast a glow in his eyes, creating an illusion of tenderness. A wave of sourness filled Alina's chest. She slowly spoke. What if I were pregnant? What would you do?" "Pregnant." Ethan lifted his eyelids, a half smile on his face. "Your child, I'd find it dirty." Chapter 7. Hearing his words, Alina's breath caught in her throat. Ethan covered her bloodless lips with his. "Don't say such buzz-killing things in the future." Before Alina could say more, Ethan swept her up and carried her into the bedroom. A night of entanglement until the point of oblivion. Afterward, Ethan got up, dressed, and said casually, "Tomorrow, you'll attend the wedding rehearsal as a bridesmaid. Push all your work back." With that, he left without another glance at Alina. Alina curled up on the sofa, the tingling numbness in her body turning into a cold, sharp pain. She stared blankly in the direction Ethan had left. "Of course, Mr. Scott." Night fell. Enveloped in darkness, Alina felt trapped in a bottomless, dry well. She desperately reached out, trying to climb out, only to find it was futile. Her strength gradually faded, and in a daze, scenes from her life flashed before her eyes like a revolving lantern. Abused by her stepfather, she cried to her mother, only to be slapped. "You little tramp, I think you're the one trying to seduce him. Get out of my sight, don't interrupt my card game." In college, because of her mother, classmates spread rumors. Alina's mom seized several men at once. It's only natural she'd follow in her mother's footsteps. Arthur Scott threw money on the table, his face cold. "If you really care about Ethan, you'll leave him now." The images magnified, flashing faster and faster. Alina suddenly crouched down, covering her eyes, and screamed in despair, "Please, leave me alone, just leave me alone." Just then, she heard Ethan's voice from behind her. "Alina Smith, isn't there anything you wouldn't do for money?" Alina snapped back to reality, staring at him in a daze. Ethan strode forward, grabbing her wrist tightly. "I was so foolish before, I couldn't bear to touch you. How could I forget whose daughter you are? You should be an expert at all sorts of tricks." The person she loved most was saying the most venomous things. Alina trembled, covering her ears. "Please stop talking." Ethan's eyes were filled with utter disgust. "When I woke up after the car crash, my first thought was relief that you weren't in the car. But I didn't see you once during the month I was in the hospital." "Alina Smith, your heart is truly cruel." With that, he strode away. Alina watched his retreating back and buried her head deep in her arms. "I really can't hold on any longer." In the darkness, the faint glow of a computer screen illuminated Alina's pale face. She stared at the words on the screen for a long, long time until tears blurred her vision. Finally, with a stiff hand, she pressed the send button. 3 seconds later, the system showed that her resignation letter had been sent to Ethan's email. Chapter 8. The 7-day period was over. Alina went to the hospital for her follow-up. "Doctor, I've decided to terminate the pregnancy, but please schedule the procedure for 2 days from now." As she said this, Alina's eyes were already red. In the hospital corridor, she watched other families with envy, husbands tenderly caring for their pregnant wives. She couldn't help but gently stroke her own abdomen, whispering, "Baby, I'm sorry. Mommy has decided to give up on you. My life is a wreck, and I'm afraid for you to come out and experience a life like mine. But I still want to tell your father about your existence." Scott Corporation, CEO's office. From the moment he stepped onto the top floor, Ethan hadn't seen the familiar figure. He frowned subconsciously, feeling an inexplicable irritation. Glancing at the time, Ethan instructed his secretary, "Notify Alina Smith. If she's not here in 10 minutes, dock her entire bonus for the month." "Yes, sir." The secretary smiled and opened his work tablet. The next second, the smile froze on his face. "Mr. Scott?" He looked at the email, finding it difficult to speak. "What is it?" Ethan looked up coldly. The secretary handed over the tablet. "Miss Smith. It seems she has resigned." Ethan's eyes instantly turned frighteningly dark. Meanwhile, Alina returned to her apartment, only to run into someone she didn't want to see downstairs. Seeing Alina, Felicity Jones's fists clenched. The next second, she raised her hand and slapped her hard. "First, you pretend to agree to be my bridesmaid, then you disappear," causing Ethan Deere to cancel the wedding rehearsal. "Alina Smith, I really underestimated you." Alina held her cheek, wanting to explain, but a dull ache in her lower abdomen made her want to leave quickly. Seeing her try to walk away, Felicity became even more agitated. She lunged forward, attacking her. This scene was witnessed by Alina's mother, Helen, who was returning from an all-night card game. She clutched her purse and rushed over, hitting Felicity with it. "Where did this little tramp come from, daring to hit my daughter?" The pampered young lady was no match for Helen. In no time, her clothes were torn and her hair was a mess. She sat on the ground in disarray, shouting insults at Alina. Helen finally understood what was happening. She dusted off her pants, slowly walked over to Alina, a triumphant glint in her eyes. "Young lady, I advise you to give up. Our Alina is pregnant with Mr. Scott's child. With that alone, you don't stand a chance." "Mom," Alina couldn't stop her mother, the words were already out. Is what she said true? Seeing Alina instinctively cover her abdomen was all the confirmation Felicity needed. Felicity's eyes turned crimson, the hatred in them so intense she looked like she wanted to skin Alina alive. "Alina Smith, I'm going to kill you." Felicity had lost all reason. She lunged forward and wrapped her hands tightly around Alina's neck. Alina was suffocating, struggling to pry Felicity's hands away. In a daze, she saw the reflection of a car driving against traffic in Felicity's pupils. With all her strength, she wrapped her arms around Felicity's waist, and the two of them tumbled into the greenbelt. Having narrowly escaped death, Alina clutched her chest, coughing uncontrollably. Felicity, beside her, was trembling with fear. Ding! Alina's phone rang. It was Ethan. "Alina Smith, you dare to resign? Believe me, I..." Hearing Ethan's voice, Felicity snatched the phone. "Ethan dear, come quick, Alina Smith is trying to kill me." Chapter 9. Alina stood blankly outside the emergency room. Her neck was covered in purple finger marks, and blood seeped through the gauze on her arm. A still shaken Felicity cried in Ethan's arms, accusing Alina of violence. "All right, this is a hospital." Ethan gently patted the woman in his arms, but his eyes were fixed coldly on Alina. "Alina Smith, why did you try to harm Felicity?" The accused slowly looked up, her eyes empty and lifeless. "Yes, why did I try to harm her? How did things turn out this way?" Visions started appearing again. Felicity's hysteria, her mother's selfish greed, and Ethan. Alina felt a boom go off in her head. She clutched her head and whimpered in pain. In 5 years, this was the first time Ethan had seen Alina so vulnerable. He suppressed the urge to pull her into his arms. Alina leaned against the wall to stand up, then lowered her head and walked away. Watching her slender, retreating back, an inexplicable panic washed over him. He made an excuse to leave Felicity and returned home alone. Arthur Scott was waiting for him in the study. "How is Felicity?" "She's fine, just a scratch on her arm." Arthur nodded. "Good. Arrange for Alina Smith to go abroad immediately. The Jones family must not find out about the illegitimate child." Ethan froze, suddenly remembering the time Alina had asked him about being pregnant. So that's what it was. A cold light glinted in Ethan's eyes. Understood. The next day, Ethan asked Alina to meet him at the hospital. Ethan's eyes narrowed, his gaze chilling. "I know everything." His words were casual, as if discussing the weather. Elena opened her mouth, unsure what to say. She thought Ethan was angry about her hiding the pregnancy. She thought Ethan wanted to keep the child. "About the baby, I never intended to hide. Did you think you could tie me down for life just by having a child?" Elena's heart trembled, a strong sense of unease washing over her. She wanted to explain but didn't know where to start. Just then, a nurse came over. "Mr. Scott, the abortion procedure is ready." Hearing that Ethan was going to get rid of the baby, Elena was stunned. Her maternal instincts kicked in. She wanted to protect this child. "Ethan, no," she forgot everything else, kneeling and clutching the corner of his coat, begging in panic, "Please, this is your child. I promise, I'll take him far away, I won't affect your wedding." At her words, Ethan bent down and gripped her chin, his voice dropping to a freezing point. "Look at you, willing to give up all your dignity for $10 million. It's disgusting." He flung her hand away in disgust. "If a child could choose, knowing it had a mother like you, it would probably wish it had never been born." Elena collapsed to her knees. Ethan's words shattered all her hopes. "He wouldn't want me as his mother? He would regret being my child?" Just then, the nurse brought over the consent form. "Miss Smith, please sign here." Elena looked at Ethan. In that moment, his cold, disgusted gaze seemed to transform into the eyes of the child in her womb. The pain was so intense, Elena couldn't breathe. Ethan's words had broken down all her resistance. She woodenly signed the consent form and obediently followed the nurse into the operating room. For some reason, Ethan suddenly felt extremely agitated. It's all her fault, she's just too good at acting. Just as Ethan was about to leave, the procedure in progress, lights suddenly went out. A nurse hurried out. "Mr. Scott, Miss Smith has a mild blood clotting disorder. If we continue with the procedure, it could be life-threatening." At that moment, Elena's phone received a text from her mother. "Daughter, this is the Scott family's first child. 10 million seems a little low." Ethan sneered. "Continue the procedure." Chapter 10, on the operating table. Elena stared wide-eyed at the blinding light of the surgical lamp. She could feel the cold instruments inside her body. The pain in her abdomen grew more intense. She bit her lip so hard that it bled, but she didn't make a sound. She wanted to use the pain to remember this moment, to never forget it until she died. Slowly, she felt a small life being taken from her body. With a strength she didn't know she had, Elena grabbed the nearest nurse. Everyone froze and looked at her. Elena forced words from her throat. "Doctor, please don't throw the baby away. Can you let me keep it?" The doctor's hand tightened on his instrument, and he nodded at her. After receiving the doctor's promise, Elena could hold on no longer and passed out. In a daze, a tiny voice whispered in her ear, "Mommy." "It hurts so much?" Elena blinked, and a single tear rolled down her cheek. When she woke up again, the night was dark and rain was lashing down. A flash of lightning illuminated her bloodless face. She turned her head slightly and saw a small box on the bedside table. Her eyes instantly turned red. The anesthetic hadn't worn off completely. She reached out and, after a long struggle, managed to cradle the small box in her hands. "Baby, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid." After the nurse's rounds were over, Elena, enduring the pain in her body, quietly left the hospital. The streets were nearly empty, and the heavy rain beat down on her. She walked with heavy steps, not knowing how long it took her to get home. She stood stiffly for a long time before carefully taking a small cloth bag from a cabinet. Inside was a toy ring from a children's play set. "Here, wear this ring. It means you've agreed to be my bride." "You wish, Ethan Scott. You think you can get me to marry you with this little trinket? Dream on." Though the girl said no, she clutched the cheap ring tightly in her hand. The boy's expression turned serious. "Elena, on our wedding day, I will make you the happiest bride in the world. Okay?" The memory was still vivid, but reality was now unbearably cold. Tears welled up in her eyes. Elena's hand trembled as she picked up a pen and wrote a note. "Ethan, goodbye. I wish you happiness." After writing it, Elena called for a local courier and sent the cloth bag and the note together. Finally, she hugged the small box tightly, turned, and walked out of the apartment without a trace of lingering. On the coast of Huicheng City, the waves crashed endlessly. Without a moment's hesitation, Elena walked step by step into the icy, bone-chilling sea. When she was young, her beloved father had died from illness and overwork. When she grew up, the man she truly loved, Ethan, had a car accident and nearly died. Maybe her very existence was a mistake. The only thing she could do now was to completely exit Ethan's life. At least I still have you. The cold seawater rose past her chin. Her voice was gentle. Mommy's coming to be with you. The journey is too cold. She couldn't bear for her baby to be alone. The sea was rough. A large wave crashed over her, and Alina sank beneath the waves. Everything returned to calm. Her suffering was finally over. Chapter 11, CEO's Office, Break Room. Ethan Scott's eyes snapped open, his heart pounding. For days, he had been having the same nightmare, a blurry figure slowly walking into an endless darkness. He kept chasing, but could only watch as the person disappeared. Ethan clutched his aching chest and took a deep breath. It was just a dream, yet he felt as if he had lost something incredibly important. He subconsciously opened his phone. Alina hadn't contacted him in 3 days. No messages, no calls. Ethan stared at the name Alina Smith on his screen and sneered. Did she think this would force him to look for her? Too bad, he didn't care about her at all. Scott Corporation, conference room. Ethan sat at the head of the long table, coldly watching his team fight tooth and nail over a project. After a long, heated debate, no one had convinced the other. Ethan was getting tired. Alina Smith, what are your thoughts? A familiar yet distant name. The discussion stopped abruptly. Everyone looked at the man at the head of the table. Ethan realized his slip, coughed, and signaled for the discussion to continue. After the meeting, people started whispering. How many times has Mr. Scott called out for Miss Smith for no reason now? Didn't HR say she resigned? But Mr. Scott never approved it, did he? That afternoon, Ethan left the company. Alina's mother, Helen, was waiting for him at the entrance, a fawning expression on her face. Mr. Scott, Alina tore up that $10 million check. Could you, perhaps write me a new one? Hearing this, Ethan was puzzled. Alina hadn't accepted the $10 million. Why? He dismissed Helen and drove directly to Alina's apartment. He knocked for a long time, but there was no answer. Ethan stood at the door, extremely frustrated. He couldn't hold back any longer. He took out his phone and dialed her number. The line just rang and rang. He then realized she had blocked him. Rage surged through Ethan, and he slammed his fist on the door. Alina Smith, you play your games well. Disappointed, Ethan returned to his villa. A servant handed him a package. He glanced at it casually and saw the sender's name was Alina Smith. He quickly took the box, a smile he couldn't suppress appearing on his lips. Playing hard to get 1 minute, then finding new ways to get his attention the next. Alina, you've learned a new trick. Ethan's good mood lasted until he opened the cloth bag. When he saw the ring and the note inside, he froze. All the memories of their beautiful love story flashed through his mind. Why does she still have this? Shouldn't she have thrown it away long ago? She should be out spending that $10 million, not holding onto this worthless thing for so many years. Ethan angrily threw the ring on the floor. The cheap little flower on it broke off and shattered. He stared at the fragments on the ground for a long time, then carefully picked them up. He picked up his phone and called Charlie Harris. Help me look into something. Don't let my family know. Before he could hang up, another call came in. It was Walter King. Ethan answered the call, putting on a pretense of cordiality, but the other party wasn't buying it. He asked bluntly, Ethan, how long has it been since you've seen Alina Smith? Hearing Alina Smith from Walter King's mouth angered Ethan. He gripped his phone tightly, his voice turning cold. That's my private business. You don't need to concern yourself with it, Mr. King. The person on the other end of the line sighed softly. Ethan, my biggest regret is not having the determination to snatch Alina from you. Maybe then she wouldn't be lying in the cold sea. Ethan's temples throbbed, his head pounding. Walter, I don't know what you're talking about. Ethan, Alina Smith is dead. Chapter 12. Last night, police in the Starsea district of Huicheng found a body floating in the sea. They couldn't retrieve it due to the strong waves, but they recovered a phone from the body, confirming the owner was Alina Smith. I called her last night, but she didn't pick up. She might have already taken her life by then. A witness said she walked into the sea with absolute determination. There was no time to save her. Walter's words were like a heavy hammer, striking Ethan's heart again and again. Something churned in his eyes, but he forcibly held it back. Ethan returned to the villa, appearing calm on the surface, but his mind was in chaos. Arthur Scott walked over. The Jones family called. They said you didn't show up at the hotel to discuss the engagement. What's going on? Ethan didn't answer, instead asking, "That 10 million, did you offer it yourself or did Alina ask for it?" His father grew angry. The groom-to-be disappears without a word before the engagement party, and you have the nerve to discuss such trivial matters with me? He was right. In everyone's eyes, Alina had never been someone worth paying attention to. The sudden realization of this fact sent a pang of pain through Ethan's heart. He lowered his eyes, hiding the anguish. Arthur Scott spoke authoritatively, "Get your things ready and go apologize to the Jones family. You must get engaged to Felicity, and if I'm not willing, what can you do?" His father's face darkened, his eyes filled with growing anger. "You've defied me twice for that woman." Ethan suddenly looked up, his eyes filled with a bone-chilling coldness. "My marriage does not require your interference." With that, he turned and left. Leaving the hotel, Ethan sat in his car, his thoughts a tangled mess. Charlie Harris's call came at that moment. "Ethan, I've got a lead on what you asked me to investigate. Actually, don't stammer, what is it?" Charlie's hesitation made Ethan inexplicably anxious, his voice trembling slightly. Back then, Alina's mother was caught cheating at an underground casino. They demanded $3 million to let her go. It just so happened you had your car accident then. Your father told Alina that the Scott family would never accept her as a daughter-in-law, and if she didn't leave, he would change the heir to the Scott Corporation. At the time, your half-brother, Leon Scott, was a constant threat, ready to endanger your life. She had no choice but to leave, allowing you to remain the primary heir and receive the best treatment. Ethan, we all misunderstood Alina. She only took the $3 million from your father to ransom her mother. She didn't take a penny more. Charlie's words were like a sharp knife, instantly piercing Ethan's heart, the pain so intense he curled up. She even tore up the $10 million check. How could she care about money? What did she care about then? After a long time, Ethan finally regained some strength. He carefully took the gray velvet bag from his pocket and solemnly placed the gaudy ring on the ring finger of his right hand. The black sports car tore through the dark night sky. The flashing neon lights outside reflected on Ethan's face, his expression resolute. "Alina Smith, I don't believe you're dead. I will find you." Chapter 13. Alina Smith was not dead. She had drifted with the current and washed ashore in a small fishing village. When Alina opened her eyes, she didn't know where she was. She pushed herself up, taking in the old furniture and mottled walls, which, surprisingly, made her feel at ease. The memories slowly returned. She remembered the icy water, ruthlessly crashing over her until she sank into the sea. But she was alive. Did even heaven reject someone like her? Alina then remembered the box she had been clutching before she lost consciousness. She began to search for it frantically. The old wooden floorboards creaked. The sound naturally caught the attention of someone outside. The curtain by the door was pushed aside, and a plainly dressed middle-aged woman walked in, meeting Alina's gaze. She smiled so broadly her eyes crinkled into lines. "Child, you're awake?" That one sentence smoothed away Alina's inner turmoil. The woman was about her mother's age. She tried to get out of bed but stumbled, nearly falling. The woman came over and helped her up. "No rush, take it slow, you're very weak." The woman's hands were thin and dry, but Alina felt a long-lost warmth. She clung to the woman's hand, unwilling to let go. A look of kindness appeared on the woman's face. She opened a drawer and handed Alina the small box. "Were you looking for this? You were holding it so tightly when you washed ashore. I figured it must be very important to you." Alina took it like a treasure, tears streaming down her face. The woman patted her back. "Whatever happened, it's in the past. I'm alone now too. If you don't mind, you can stay here." Alina nodded repeatedly. It had been a long time since she had felt what it was like to have a home. Over the next few days, under the woman's careful care, Alina was finally able to slowly get out of bed and walk around. She looked at the digital clock on the wall and realized that 3 months had passed since the day she had jumped into the sea. Alina walked out of the room, breathing in the fresh air. She felt reborn. During these days, Alina learned about the woman from the neighbors. Her name was Linda May, a local widow with no children who made a living from a small restaurant she had run for years. She also heard that Auntie Linda had spent most of her savings to save her. That Linda May must be crazy, thinking this girl she picked up will take care of her in her old age. Yeah, who from a normal family would be found floating in the sea? Who knows what kind of shady business she was in before? Two women were gossiping at the entrance of the restaurant. Elena stood by the doorpost, listening, her fists clenched so tightly her nails dug into her palms. You two old hens, what are you gossiping about on my territory? Did my Nanan eat your food or drink your soup? Mind your own business. If you have that much free time, go home and do some work before your husbands come looking for you and give you a good slap. Auntie Linda's words were a bit coarse, but to Elena, they were the most beautiful words she had heard in years. She secretly resolved to live well, if only for Auntie Linda's sake. Nanan, come help me figure out this little TV. Hearing this, Elena walked over with determination. When the two women saw her, they scurried away in guilt. The small TV in Auntie Linda's living room was old and needed fixing every couple of weeks. Elena thought that once she recovered, she would find a job and buy Auntie Linda a big color TV. After a lot of effort, the screen finally came back on, showing some news program. Elena glanced at it absent-mindedly and then froze. In the bottom right corner of the screen, a missing person notice was scrolling. Elena Smith, 28 years old, went missing on date. A reward of $1 million is offered for any information leading to her whereabouts. Chapter 14, boom, a startling clap of thunder echoed outside, and a torrential downpour began instantly. Amidst the noise, Ethan's voice was low and heavy. What did you say? You checked wrong. I want Elena Smith alive. Understand? The last two words were practically squeezed through his teeth, carrying a chilling coldness. The secretary, overwhelmed by his presence, took a slight step back. Mr. Scott, the people I sent have checked repeatedly. Miss Smith, she is truly gone. This is the detailed investigation report. Ethan didn't speak, his lips pressed tightly together. He stubbornly swept the file off his desk. You're lying to me. You're all lying to me. You don't want to look. Fine, I'll find her myself one day. I will find Elena Smith. After an unknown amount of time, Ethan's racing heart finally began to slow, and the redness in his eyes faded. He leaned, exhausted and disheveled, against his desk, his spine slumping as he covered his face with his hands. Elena Smith, where are you hiding? When Arthur Scott arrived at the apartment, he found the living room coffee table and sofa littered with empty liquor bottles. Photos of Elena were scattered everywhere. The sound of running water came from the bathroom. The floor was soaked. Ethan was submerged in the bathtub, his fingers gripping the edge of the tub, already turning purple, yet he refused to come up for air. Seeing this, his father angrily ran over, pulled Ethan out, and yelled, "Are you crazy? You're going to drown yourself?" Ethan's eyes were bloodshot, his neck covered in scratch marks. He spoke to his father half-drunk. "Dad, I've tried so many times. The most I can last is 2 minutes underwater." But Elena walked into the sea without a moment's hesitation. The water was so cold, how did she endure it? The more Ethan spoke, the more agitated he became. He slammed his fist into the wall. Blood trickled from between his fingers into the pool of water, but he seemed to feel no pain, muttering to himself, "Why?" She was so afraid of water. Why? Arthur had no other choice but to comfort him. They haven't found Elena yet, have they? Maybe the witness was mistaken. Maybe the person who jumped into the sea that night wasn't her. Really? Ethan clung to this like a lifeline, leaning on his father as he staggered out of the bathroom. But the next second, he shook his head and retrieved a locked box from the bedroom. Arthur took it. The box had a 4-digit combination lock, 822. The code was already entered. It was Ethan's birthday. Arthur felt a sense of unease. With a click, the lock opened. Inside were neatly arranged rows of duloxetine and amitriptyline hydrochloride. Beneath the medication was a report. Patient exhibits depressed mood, slow thinking, and reduced mental activity, consistent with moderate to severe depression, with a risk of suicide. Ethan's voice sounded in his ear. "Dad, Elena didn't want to live anymore." Chapter 15, when Ethan woke up, his father had already left. A note was on the table. "Ethan, this is Helen's address. Go and ask her. The porridge is on the table. Eat it while it's hot. Don't collapse before you find her." A glimmer of hope ignited in Ethan. He was so excited he forgot about eating and drove straight to Helen's residence. Looking at Helen, Ethan was surprised. She had lost a lot of weight in just over a month and was much more stooped. In response to Ethan's request for any clues, Helen just gave a bitter smile. When she spoke, her voice was desolate. "Mr. Scott, Alina hates me enough as it is. Even if she were alive, why would she contact me? I don't deserve to be her mother." Looking at the woman before him, who for the first time wasn't wearing a fawning smile, Ethan felt a sudden pang of sympathy. He said a few simple words of "take care" and prepared to leave. Helen hesitated for a moment, then slowly began to speak. "I used to tell Alina that nothing was more important than money. She didn't believe me and insisted on tearing up that check. How foolish of her. It was just an illegitimate child. How could it compare to $10 million? Later, I realized she really wanted to keep that child." As Helen spoke, she handed Ethan a large box. "She treasured these things. They're no use to an old woman like me. If you want them, Mr. Scott, take them." Ethan carefully opened the box. The contents made his breath catch. Inside were various baby clothes and hats, all carefully washed and folded. Next to them was a file folder containing all of Alina's prenatal checkup reports. Ethan looked at the developing silhouette of the child on the reports and could no longer hold back, clutching his chest and letting out a choked sob. Ethan almost fled from Helen's house. He had never imagined how much Alina had looked forward to the birth of that child. She had wanted to keep the child, even if it was a futile struggle. And what had he done? He had spoken to her with condescension, saying the most hurtful things, forcing her to have an abortion. He was the one who got her pregnant, and he was the one who forced her to get rid of the baby. What had he said then? If a child could choose, knowing it had a mother like you, it would probably wish it had never been born. It seemed to be after he said that Alina signed the papers. What was she thinking as she walked to the operating room? On the operating table, was she cold? Was she scared? Ethan sat in his car, rubbing his face fiercely. A mocking voice echoed in his ear. "Ethan Scott, you deserve to lose him." That night, Ethan had a dream. A plump, white baby with smiling, curved eyebrows toddled towards him. He reached out to hold him, but the baby pouted and cried, asking why he didn't want him. "Baby," Ethan shouted, waking from the dream. He clutched his chest, gasping for air. He finally felt the pain of Alina losing her child, but it was too late to change anything. The next morning, Ethan went to a local temple to pray for the lost child and to beg for help in finding his love soon. Prayers require sincerity. From the temple gate to the main hall, Ethan proceeded on his knees, kowtowing every 3 steps. The temple was constantly filled with people coming to chant sutras and offer incense. Ethan's actions drew a lot of attention, with some people even pointing and staring. But Ethan didn't care. Hadn't Alina endured enough cold stares and humiliation because of him? He thought of that dinner party, where Walter King had flirted with Alina under the influence of alcohol. He hadn't defended her. Instead, he had subjected her to even greater humiliation, with the surrounding people laughing maliciously and no one coming to her rescue. Was she already sick back then? Ethan continued forward, the blood from his scraped forehead mixing with tears as it streamed down his face, making him look utterly wretched. Finally, Ethan reached the hall of sincere prayer. He carefully knelt on a cushion, kowtowed piously, and then his vision went black and he collapsed, leaving a long trail of blood behind him. Chapter 16, the missing person notice was the last straw for Alina. She mechanically picked up the remote and turned off the TV. Auntie Linda came out from the back room and looked at Alina. "Nanan, what's wrong?" Alina didn't answer. Cold sweat beaded on her forehead and her breathing became difficult. In a daze, she heard Auntie Linda's voice. "Nanan, don't scare me, someone. Please help." Alina lost consciousness. When she woke up, she was in a hospital bed. The smell of disinfectant in the room made her nauseous. She turned her head and saw Auntie Linda asleep by her side. A warm feeling spread through her body. She struggled to sit up, leaning against the headboard. "Auntie, I'm fine now. Let's go home." Auntie Linda looked doubtful, gripping her hand tightly. "Nanan, if you're sick, we'll get treatment. Don't worry about the money." Alina lowered her head, not knowing how to explain her condition to Auntie Linda. Just then, a young man in a white coat and rimless glasses entered the room. "Ma'am, she is physically fine. She can be discharged at any time." Hearing the doctor's words, Auntie Linda was finally relieved and went downstairs with a nurse to handle the discharge papers. The young doctor didn't leave immediately. He walked over to Alina. Hello, my name is Quentin Reed. I studied some psychology in school. If you feel unwell in the future, you can come find me. Eleanor looked up sharply. Quentin smiled at her. Don't worry, Auntie Linda might not understand these things. I haven't told her. This will be our secret. Eleanor lowered her eyes, still somewhat resistant to this stranger's kindness. Quentin didn't say more, placed a piece of paper with his phone number on the table, and left the room. Eleanor hesitated for a moment before reaching out and clutching the paper tightly in her hand. If she could, she wanted to live like a normal person. Not trapped in a quagmire of memories, living in constant fear. She truly wanted to say goodbye to the past and live a peaceful life with Auntie Linda. 1 year later. In March, the weather in Huicheng was still transitioning from cold to warm. After attending a signing ceremony for a fishing village resort project, Ethan drove back to the apartment. For the past year, Ethan had bought the apartment Eleanor used to rent, trying to feel her presence there, as if only that could fill the void in his heart. He had gone to many places, and tips from the missing person notice kept coming in. Whenever there was a lead, he would go, without a moment's rest. But despite traveling so far and spending so much money, he still couldn't find her. After a shower, Ethan returned to his study and casually clicked on a promotional video for a fishing village that his secretary had sent him. The village was quiet and peaceful, the villagers simple and natural, nothing special. Ethan rubbed his eyes about to close the video when his gaze suddenly froze. In a restaurant featured for its local cuisine, a busy figure flashed by. Ethan's heart pounded. He trembled as he zoomed in on the video, confirming it was the person he had been thinking about day and night. The emotions he had suppressed for a year finally found an outlet. Ethan's throat relaxed, and he began to sob uncontrollably. After a while, having regained his composure, Ethan picked up his phone and called his secretary. Book me the earliest flight to Xiaolai Fishing Village. Chapter 17. Eleanor had gradually adapted to life in the fishing village. However, her depression still flared up from time to time, and when unbearable memories from the past resurfaced, she had to struggle to control her impulses. Eleanor thought this life would continue forever. She thought she would never see Ethan Scott again, but things rarely go as planned. One day, Eleanor was organizing stock in the restaurant storeroom when the wind chime at the door tinkled, signaling a customer. "Hello, what can I get for you?" Eleanor habitually smiled and looked up, but upon seeing the person, she froze as if nailed to the spot. The air solidified. The face that appeared in her dreams was now starkly real before her. But the once cold face now held an incredibly complex expression. It was a kind of madness, suppressing immense joy. "Eleanor, I've finally found you." Ethan walked towards Eleanor step by step. Her breathing became rapid, a feeling of drowning suffocation. Fortunately, Auntie Linda heard the commotion and rushed over, pulling the stunned Eleanor behind her. "Who are you? What are you doing here?" Auntie Linda's loud questioning snapped Ethan out of his joy. "Hello, I'm here to take Eleanor home." After saying this, Ethan looked anxiously at Eleanor. Eleanor clutched her chest, helplessly backing away until she was hiding behind a man, clutching his sleeve like a lifeline. A sour feeling filled Ethan's heart. Once, Eleanor had seen him as her rock, but he had personally pushed her away, plunging her into despair. But now was not the time for regret. The hand clutching the sleeve was trembling. Ethan saw that something was wrong with Eleanor. He anxiously stepped forward, but was stopped by Quentin Reed's outstretched arm. At this moment, Ethan had lost all his former coolness and pride. He simply pleaded, "Please let me see how Eleanor is." Yes, he really just wanted to see her. To see how the person he had thought about day and night for a year was doing. Quentin's expression was complicated. "She's sick. If you want to know about her condition, come outside with me." Ethan looked at Eleanor, who was being protected by Auntie Linda, sighed, and followed him out. "Mr. Scott, let's be frank. I believe your presence will only worsen Eleanor's condition." "What do you mean by that? I just want to see her." Ethan instinctively felt that the man before him was not welcoming. As expected, Quentin sneered. "See her. That night she washed ashore, half dead. Why didn't anyone come to see her then? When she was so weak she was bedridden for days, you didn't come to see her. When her depression acted up and she tried to kill herself multiple times, why didn't you come to see her?" Ethan couldn't bear to hear anymore. He covered his ears in pain, as if enduring immense suffering. Only now did he seem to understand what Alina had been through this past year. Quentin looked coldly at the man on the verge of collapse. He was about to say more when he heard Auntie Linda's shout from inside. "Help, something's wrong with Nanan." Hearing Auntie Linda's shout, both men rushed into the room at the same time. Alina's gaze was vacant, but her body was trembling like a leaf, and she was muttering incoherently. Quentin knew Alina was having another episode. Without hesitation, he quickly picked her up and headed for the door. Seeing this, Ethan's face turned cold. "Put Alina down," he said loudly. Quentin didn't yield an inch. "If you don't want to see her die, get out of the way." Chapter 18, a flicker of terror crossed Ethan's eyes. He clenched his jaw and stepped aside. Quentin carried Alina and strode away. Ethan watched them go, then ran after them. At the clinic, Alina was given a tranquilizer and finally calmed down. On the bed, her brow was furrowed, tears stained her cheeks. Even in sleep, she was not at peace. The next morning, Alina woke up from a nightmare. The scene was almost identical to a dream from years ago. Alina tried desperately to grab her mother's hand, but only clutched at air. A distraught Alina clutched Ethan's sleeve, crying, but he coldly pushed her hand away and walked off without looking back, leaving her alone in the endless darkness. "No, don't go," Alina screamed as she opened her eyes. Everything from the dream vanished, leaving only the creaking ceiling fan above and the concerned faces of Auntie Linda and Quentin Reed. Alina felt a little better. Unlike in the past when she faced loneliness alone, this time she finally had people to lean on. Every small improvement in her health brought them joy. As Alina thought about this, her expression suddenly froze. Why did she have an attack the moment she saw Ethan, when she already had people who loved her? Ethan stood in the hallway, his eyes fixed on the door of the hospital room. The person he had been thinking of day and night was right there. Not rushing in was the last ounce of his self-control. After an unknown amount of time, the door to the room opened from the inside. Alina's figure came into view. He took a step forward. Alina seemed to sense him and looked his way. Ethan subconsciously held his breath, but her gaze merely swept past him. It didn't linger for even a second. Ethan gave a bitter smile and shook his head. In the past, he had always ignored Alina's love. Now it was his turn to suffer. The next day, Ethan drove to the small restaurant early. The shop was clean, the tables and chairs neatly arranged. Ethan knew it was Alina's work. She always kept her surroundings tidy. Just then, Auntie Linda came out from the back room. "What can I get for you?" The next moment, Ethan watched as Auntie Linda's expression changed, and she immediately headed for the door. Ethan quickly stopped her. "Auntie Linda, I'm here for some steamed buns." With that, Ethan took out his wallet, placed a bill on the counter, and forced a smile. "2 vegetable buns, please." Auntie Linda felt her hand itch to do something else. She took the money, slowly walked over to the steamer, and began to fuss with it. Just then, Alina lifted the curtain and came out from the back. Ethan's eyes lit up. Alina. She had deliberately ignored the memory of yesterday, but she hadn't expected to see him so early today. Alina slowly looked up. The morning light fell on him, his shadow wrapping around her. Alina remembered the dreams she used to have, but the person in her dreams was always cold and ruthless, not like now. He was standing here alive, his eyes full of tenderness, as if she were a long-lost treasure. Ethan took a step forward, his voice trembling slightly. "Alina Smith, please talk to me." Alina took a step back, then, for some reason, stood her ground. Auntie Linda was about to step forward, but seeing Alina's expression, she also stopped, merely watching Ethan with a wary eye. Ethan let out a sigh of relief. He wasn't afraid of anything except Alina avoiding him completely, leaving him powerless. He softened his voice. Can we talk?" Chapter 19. Alina's face instantly turned deathly pale, her fingertips trembling slightly. Seeing this, Auntie Linda silently picked up a broom and began to sweep repeatedly at the doorway. The dust she raised, accidentally, settling on Ethan's shoes. "You should go. My Nanan doesn't know you." Hearing this, Ethan looked at Auntie Linda and said earnestly, "Auntie, I am her boyfriend." A look of disdain flashed in Auntie Linda's eyes. "My Nanan is very popular in the village. Many young men want to be her boyfriend. We don't need you." Ethan's face changed. Alina watched him, seeing him want to flare up but swallow it down, feeling a wave of complex emotions. The old Ethan was always high and mighty, his word was law. Now, he had to watch his words and expressions. He was starting to care about others' feelings. At this thought, Eleanor's mood unexpectedly calmed down. She turned to Auntie Linda, trying to look composed. "Don't worry, Auntie Linda. I'll be back soon." They walked one after the other in silence. The fishing village wasn't large. They soon reached the seaside. The sea breeze was still salty and damp, the water still cold. Nothing had changed from that night. Eleanor suddenly felt a chill. She shrugged slightly and whispered, "Ethan, what do you want this time?" A sudden, sharp pain pierced Ethan's heart. Eleanor looked past him towards the sea, her eyes clear, devoid of any emotion. Ethan's heart felt as if a large hole had been torn in it. He finally understood that all his past bluster and insincerity were just to cover up the fact that he still liked Eleanor. And Eleanor, this person, wanted to leave his life. This realization drove Ethan nearly mad. He struggled to control his emotions, suppressing all the violent and obsessive thoughts. He said, "I just want to see you more." Now, his only wish, the only thing he could get, was to see her more. Eleanor was a little stunned. She opened her mouth but said nothing more. How long could he keep this up? One day, when he got tired of this, he would naturally leave. Eleanor had clearly underestimated Ethan's determination. From the day he found Eleanor, Ethan had secretly sworn that no matter how long he had to wait, no matter the cost, he would be with her. Every day, he stood on the top floor of the building he had temporarily rented, looking towards the small restaurant, feeling content. The hole in his chest gradually filled. Even with all the difficulties, it was better than the year of aimless searching. With his mind made up, Ethan started to hang around the grocery store every day. Even when Auntie Linda's eye rolls reached the heavens, he pretended not to see, arriving with a smile and leaving with a smile. This continued for 2 months, until it was interrupted by an unexpected visitor. Eleanor was at the counter doing the accounts when she heard the clacking of high heels approaching. She looked up, and it was Felicity Jones. She hadn't seen her in over a year. She was still as glamorous as ever, but thinner, with a hint of fatigue in her eyes. "Long time no see, Eleanor Smith." Felicity smiled at Eleanor, but there was no warmth in her eyes. "I heard you lost the baby." Chapter 20. Quentin was the first to notice that something was wrong with Eleanor. After 6 months of consistent therapy, Eleanor had started to open up, but today she had shut herself off again. He tried to guide her into a deep sleep. Eleanor once again fell into those painful nightmares. "Ah!" Eleanor screamed as she struggled awake from the dream, meeting Quentin's worried eyes. Quentin left Eleanor in the consultation room to research better ways to help her. 10 minutes later, the door was pushed open. Eleanor's eyes widened. It was Felicity, and she was holding a knife. Earlier, Felicity had humiliated Eleanor with the cruelest words, but clearly, she wasn't done with her. Felicity locked the door from the inside and charged at Eleanor. Eleanor panicked and ran to a corner, but Felicity caught up with her. In the nick of time, Ethan kicked the door open and rushed in. He threw himself at Felicity, taking the knife for Eleanor, his abdomen stabbed. Seeing the injured Ethan, Felicity went mad. "I'm going to kill her, Ethan. It's because of her that you canceled the wedding. If I kill her, we can be together." Ethan clutched his abdomen with one hand and gripped the sharp knife with the other. "Felicity, canceling the wedding was my fault. If you want revenge, come after me. But if you hurt Eleanor, I won't let you go. The person I've always loved is Eleanor. I was just too foolish to realize my own feelings." Ethan gritted his teeth, shielding Eleanor behind him, glaring at Felicity to keep her from advancing. Felicity broke down. She let go of her hand, and the knife fell to the floor with a clatter. "So it was all just my wishful thinking," she muttered to herself, her eyes vacant, as she walked out of the room and was apprehended by hospital security. Eleanor rushed to check Ethan's wound. It was deep, and blood was pouring out. Ethan's focus was fading, but he still held Eleanor's hand tightly. "I'm sorry, Eleanor, for scaring you again." Ethan forced a smile, wanting to wipe away Eleanor's tears, but his outstretched hand fell limply. The surgery lasted for over 3 hours. Ethan was out of danger. Outside the operating room, Eleanor was deeply relieved to hear the news. She sent a text to Charlie Harris and quietly left the hospital. In the hospital room, Ethan slowly regained consciousness. He opened his eyes but didn't see the person he longed for. "Ethan, stop looking," she went back. Hearing Charlie's words, Ethan's eyes dimmed. He remembered how, in the past, after every social event, no matter how late, Alina would come to pick him up. There would always be a bowl of perfectly warm hangover soup waiting at home. And now, he had just been to hell and back, but she didn't seem to care. Ethan gave a bitter smile. It was all his own fault. The phone by the bed rang. It was the hospital in Huicheng. Listening to the news, Ethan's expression grew heavy. When Ethan arrived at the fishing village restaurant, Alina was helping Auntie Linda prepare vegetables. A shadow fell over Alina. She looked up and met Ethan's dark eyes. Ethan spoke first. "Alina, I have to go back. My flight is tomorrow." "Oh, safe travels." Alina's face was calm, showing little emotion. Even though he expected it, seeing Alina's indifferent attitude still saddened Ethan. "Alina, I might be gone for a while this time. Would you like to come with me?" "No." Alina didn't hesitate, cutting him off. "Ethan, we can't go back." Ethan's heart jolted. He looked up and met Alina's serious eyes. "Alina, don't say that. It's all my fault. You offered me your heart and I didn't cherish it. It's my fault. I'm sorry." He spoke incoherently, the words hidden deep in his heart tumbling out. "Alina, I'm sorry." He immediately regretted it, staring at Alina, afraid she would think he was insincere and unrepentant. Alina fell silent, looking down, seemingly unable to accept it. She couldn't accept this Ethan, nor could she accept herself for softening at his apology. Alina said, "You should go, don't come back." But Ethan could clearly see that the hand pointing at the door was trembling slightly. He suddenly grabbed Alina's wrist. "Alina, I was wrong. I shouldn't have doubted your sincerity, and I especially shouldn't have." Ethan couldn't continue, his eyes welling up with tears. Alina knew what he was going to say. She closed her eyes in pain, the sound of a baby's cry seeming to echo in her ears. She forcefully pulled her hand back. "Ethan, get out." Ethan walked out of the small courtyard and leaned against the wall, dejected. The conversation had drained all his energy. He had never been so humble with anyone, but seeing the pain in Alina's eyes, he felt that any self-reproach was deserved. Chapter 21. The next day, Ethan went to the small restaurant again, hoping to see Alina one last time before he left. To his dismay, she had changed her therapy appointment in town, and he missed her. Disappointed, Ethan was about to leave when he heard a thud from inside. It sounded like someone had fallen. His expression changed, and he rushed in to find Auntie Linda lying on the floor. Without hesitation, Ethan picked her up and took her to the town hospital. When Alina returned, she sensed something was wrong even before she entered the door. Auntie Linda usually left a small light on for her by the door. "The village roads are rough. We can't have our Nanan falling." But today, the area around the small restaurant was dark, and the main door was locked. Alina rushed inside and saw that the cash box on the counter was open, and a spilled teacup was on the floor. 1,000 bad thoughts flashed through Alina's mind. She called out with a trembling voice, "Auntie? Auntie Linda." No one answered. Feeling uneasy, Alina quickly charged her phone. When she turned it on, she was flooded with over a dozen missed calls and text messages. Auntie Linda collapsed. "Come to the hospital immediately." Alina stared at the text from Ethan, her right hand shaking uncontrollably. Alina didn't know how she got to the hospital, only that she was staring blankly as Ethan walked towards her. Seeing Alina's pale face, Ethan felt a pang of sympathy, and his voice was soft. "Don't be afraid. The doctors are still examining Auntie Linda. I'll take you to her." Alina obediently followed him, like a lost child. Ethan had downplayed the situation, but it had been critical. Auntie Linda had collapsed for an unknown reason and hit her head on the counter. If he had been a moment later, the outcome would have been dire. In the hospital room, Auntie Linda lay on the bed, silent and still, her face sallow. Tears instantly welled up in Alina's eyes. She cried silently, tears streaming down her face like an open faucet, her body trembling slightly. Except for the time she lost the baby, Ethan had never seen her cry. Seeing her now, his heart felt as if it were being fried in a pan, over and over again. He panicked. "Don't cry, Alina. If they can't treat her here, we'll go to the provincial hospital. Just don't cry." Their hands had clasped together at some point. Alina snapped back to reality and suddenly pulled her hand away. "You're probably hoping they can't treat her, aren't you? She's the only family I have left. You'd probably be happy if she died." The accusation was so unfair that Ethan clenched his fists, staring at her without a word. His eyes were filled with suppressed emotion. Alina looked away, refusing to meet his gaze. "How much are the medical bills? I'll transfer the money to you later." Ethan didn't know what to say. In the past, he had always used her acceptance of money to humiliate her. Now, it was only right for her to bring up money with him. It was all his own doing. Just then, the doctor came out, his expression unreadable. Alina nervously followed him. "We can't determine the cause of the patient's illness. We don't have the facilities here." Alina's heart sank. She looked at her phone screen again, the anxiety in her eyes growing more apparent. Ethan seemed to understand something. He took a step forward and said, "I am her family. I will take responsibility." The doctor glanced at him and nodded. "Then come with me to handle the transfer procedures." Ethan said to Alina, "I'm not leaving for now. I want to make sure Auntie Linda gets better." Alina watched his retreating back, her feelings a complex mix. A moment later, her shoulders slumped in defeat and she walked into the hospital room. Chapter 22, when Ethan returned to the hospital room after completing the transfer procedures, Auntie Linda was already awake, and Alina was sitting by her bed, talking to her. Seeing him, Auntie Linda's expression softened slightly. "The doctor told me everything. Thank you for today." Alina also looked over at him. Ethan's lips curved into a self-deprecating smile. It seemed his daily vigils hadn't been entirely pointless. He said, "It's nothing, Auntie Linda. I've already handled the paperwork. We'll head to the provincial capital this afternoon." Auntie Linda opened her mouth, about to say no, but her gaze fell on Alina and she swallowed her words. She wanted to stay with this child a little longer. "All right, thank you for the trouble." That was all Auntie Linda could say. Ethan tactfully excused himself and went outside to make some calls. Alina watched his tall figure, gently squeezing Auntie Linda's hand, unsure of what she was thinking. 3 hours later, Auntie Linda was settled in a private hospital funded by Ethan. The hospital staff, unaware of Auntie Linda's identity, only knew that Ethan had personally accompanied her. They mobilized all their top experts. Auntie Linda even joked with Alina that she had never lived a good life, but was finally enjoying it in her old age. Seeing her cheerful demeanor, the tension in Alina's heart slowly eased. Ethan brought lunch. Faced with the lavish spread, Auntie Linda was a bit reserved, but Alina was quite at ease. "Go ahead and eat, Auntie. I'll pay him back later." Beside them, Ethan's expression darkened. With others present, he managed to suppress his anger. He thought painfully that he had never wanted to treat someone so well, yet all his efforts were like punching cotton, receiving no response. He gently clutched his chest, letting out a few soft coughs. After Auntie Linda had eaten and fallen asleep, Ethan eagerly pulled Alina outside. The hospital room was a large suite, so they could talk in the other room without disturbing Auntie Linda. Ethan frowned. "What did you mean by what you said at lunch? You know I don't need you to pay me back." Alina lowered her eyes. "Mr. Scott, your Scott Corporation is a huge enterprise, so of course you don't care about this money. But I am not a greedy person. Auntie Linda and I will not be indebted to you." Ethan became agitated. "You know that's not what I want, Ethan. I am grateful that you saved Auntie Linda, but I can't give you what you want, and I don't want to." Seeing her cold demeanor, Ethan's temper instantly cooled. "Alina, that's not what I meant, Alina cut him off. "Ethan, if you want me, you can have me right now." Understanding Alina's meaning, Ethan's anger flared. His face tensed, his eyes like ice. "Alina, don't push me, but in your eyes, isn't that the kind of person I am? Someone who would do anything for money, abandon all dignity. You, MMMPH." Alina's eyes widened. Unwilling to hear any more, Ethan used the most direct method to silence her. But once he started, he couldn't let go. Ethan fiercely gripped Alina's waist, forcing her to look up, trapping her in front of him. There was no escape, no place to hide. Ethan's eyes were filled with deep emotion, his breathing becoming rapid. But the next moment, he saw Alina's eyes. There was nothing there. No emotion, no love, just emptiness and despair. The passion surging within Ethan came to an abrupt halt. Chapter 23, Alina's breathing was a little unsteady, but her words were still cold. "Are you satisfied now, Mr. Scott? Don't you want to continue?" The words were extremely provocative, but Ethan only felt his heart being torn apart. Alina stared at him, her hand on the collar of her shirt. "If you're not satisfied, then leave. The next time you want me, Mr. Scott, I'll be ready." She devalued herself like this, practically putting a price on herself. Ethan's chest heaved violently, but he couldn't bring himself to say a harsh word. He was, after all, the architect of this tragedy. Elinor watched him leave, the coldness in her eyes receding, leaving only endless darkness. Just as Ethan reached the elevator, he remembered the doctor saying that Auntie Linda needed a full-body checkup before the transfer. After much hesitation, he walked back. As he reached the door of the hospital room, he froze. Elinor was crouched in a corner, her arms wrapped around herself, her head buried deep between her arms. The room was silent, not even the sound of Elinor's breathing could be heard, only the occasional gust of wind hitting the window with a soft thud. Ethan felt his heart pounding. He gently walked over and touched Elinor's wrist. It was ice cold. Unable to bear it any longer, he pulled Elinor into his arms, slowly warming her with his own body heat. He whispered, "Elinor." No response. The person in his arms let him hold her obediently, without resistance, without any of the hurtful words from before. But Ethan's heart ached. He would rather she hit him, curse him, than this silent withdrawal. He knew she had a soft spot for him. Her harsh words and self-deprecation just now were clearly out of character. But he had been blinded by anger and had walked away. If he hadn't come back, how long would she have stayed in this cold corner? Ethan patiently coaxed her. "Come on, Elinor, look up at me, please." After what felt like an eternity of coaxing, Elinor slowly lifted her head, her tear-filled eyes looking at him helplessly. Ethan's heart soured. He wiped away her tears with his thumb, trying to sound relaxed. "Weren't you so fierce just now? You should have vented your anger at me, not hidden here secretly." Elinor listened to him talk for a long time, then suddenly grabbed his arm forcefully. "I didn't take the money. I didn't trade our child for money. I wanted to keep him, but you said I wasn't worthy, that I wasn't worthy to be his mother." Ethan's vision blurred, a fine, piercing pain sweeping over his entire body. He gritted his teeth, forcing back the lump in his throat. Elinor wasn't crying, but her expression was more sorrowful than tears. Her words were cautious to the extreme, like an explanation, like a complaint. They turned into sharp blades, stabbing at Ethan's heart again and again, putting him through a slow, torturous death. For the past year, while he searched for her fruitlessly, he had tried to comfort himself by thinking that maybe, in a life without him, Elinor was doing well. But now he knew what he had done to her, how deeply he had hurt her, leaving her to live in this world as a hollow shell. Elinor had left herself in that hospital a year ago. At the moment, she lost her child and had stayed in that endless darkness until now. Ethan thought in despair that his guilt, his concern, his true love for Elinor amounted to nothing more than this. Chapter 24, Elinor cried herself to sleep. Ethan, as if holding a fragile treasure, placed her on the bed. He then went to the bathroom, got a warm towel, and gently wiped the tear stains from her face. He quietly closed the door and left the room. When Elinor woke up, it was already dark. After the heart-wrenching cry, she still felt dizzy. Just then, a nurse came to call her. Auntie Linda's examination was scheduled for 7 in the evening. She quickly got out of bed. Before the examination, Ethan was nowhere to be seen. Instead, his friend Charlie Harris was busy helping out. Elinor's entire focus was on Auntie Linda, so she didn't have the energy to think about anything else. As 7 o'clock approached, Elinor watched Auntie Linda obediently follow the doctor in for the examination, her eyes fixed on the closed door. The light for procedure in progress came on. Only then did Ethan arrive, out of breath. He first coordinated with Charlie about the procedure, then came to Elinor's side. "Elinor, Auntie Linda is a good person. She'll be fine." Elinor nodded mechanically, her eyes still glued to the operating room door. What felt like a century passed in just a quarter of an hour. Finally, the door opened and the doctor came out. "Mr. Scott, the examination has ruled out the risk of a malignant tumor. The patient may be suffering from overwork, some low blood pressure, and anemia. With proper care, she will be fine." Elinor eagerly took the report, reading it line by line, afraid she had misheard. Confirming that Auntie Linda was fine, Elinor finally relaxed. Her body suddenly went limp and she stumbled, but Ethan was quick to catch her. "I told you Auntie Linda would be fine. Life will get better from now on." Elinor nodded, and in return, she gripped his hand, as if to draw some strength from him. This was the first time Alina had initiated contact with Ethan in a long time. Ethan's eyes turned red with emotion. Because Auntie Linda was still weak, they decided she would stay in the hospital for a few more days of observation before leaving. Alina went out to buy some daily necessities for her. Ethan wanted to go with her, but Auntie Linda gave him a subtle look, signaling him to stay. This was Ethan's first time alone with Auntie Linda, and he was surprisingly nervous, like a son-in-law meeting his mother-in-law. To ease the awkwardness, he started peeling an apple, but the apple got smaller and smaller, and the peel was still not off. Auntie Linda couldn't stand to see him waste food and snatched it away to do it herself. After finishing the apple, Auntie Linda watched him endlessly scrolling on his phone and asked, "Are you always this busy?" Ethan was taken aback, not knowing the meaning behind the question, but Auntie Linda looked at him, demanding an answer. Ethan thought for a moment. Not really. It gets busy when there's something at the company, but there's plenty of free time too. Auntie Linda nodded. Sounds pretty good. What's your position? CEO. Ethan thought for a moment and added, the top boss of the company. Oh, you have your own company, that's great. Are you single now? Hearing this question, Ethan uncrossed his legs and sat up straight. Yes, I'm single. The only person I've ever formally dated is Alina. As he said the last part, he felt a little guilty. In the past, his relationship with Alina hardly qualified as dating. Auntie Linda stopped asking questions. She looked at Ethan and said, Nanan is a good girl. If you're not sure you can treat her well for the rest of her life, then let her stay with this old bag of bones. Ethan's expression tensed. Auntie Linda, I promise I will never hurt her again. Auntie Linda nodded in satisfaction and soon fell asleep. Seeing this, Ethan quietly left, pulling the blanket up to her chest before he went. Chapter 25, Alina returned to the hospital room with her things, finding Ethan waiting at the door. Seeing her, he put a finger to his lips in a shush gesture. Auntie Linda is asleep. Let's not disturb her for now. With that, Ethan took the 2 large bags from her hands and placed them in another room. Thank you for what you did for Auntie Linda. Alina felt awkward after saying this, unconsciously looking down and wringing her hands. Those few words made Ethan's heart leap with joy. He took a big step forward, wanting to take her hand, but then thought better of it and let his hand drop. Alina, don't be so formal with me. Auntie Linda is my family too. Alina didn't respond to that. The room was quiet. They could hear each other's breathing. After a long pause, as if having made a momentous decision, Ethan took a small, exquisite box from his inner pocket. When Alina saw what was inside, her heart stirred. It was a pair of rings. One was the one she had returned to Ethan. The other had a smaller flower and was a matching men's version. She remembered the night she had jumped into the sea, the pain and despair in her heart, and her eyes instantly turned red. She looked up at Ethan, her voice choked with emotion. Why are you showing me this? This is something I've already thrown away. Seeing Alina's distress, Ethan panicked. He reached out to wipe away her tears, but she awkwardly dodged him, leaving his hand frozen in midair. Alina, I didn't mean anything by it. This ring was my gift to you, a memory that belongs only to us. I want you to keep it forever. As for the other one, I had it custom made. I've been wearing it this whole year. I only took it off because I was afraid of making you angry. Every time I see it, it feels like you're still by my side. As Ethan spoke, he took out the matching rings. The inner bands were engraved with LLXCNX, the initials of their names. Take the ring back. After I sent it to you, it was no longer mine. You can do whatever you want with it, but don't give it to me. I don't need it anymore. After saying this, Alina hurriedly left the room, leaving Ethan holding the rings, stunned. Watching her retreating back, he gave a self-deprecating smile. Right, I was too hasty. After that unpleasant night, Alina didn't see Ethan again. Later, he sent a text. A major project at the company needs my attention. I'll be back after it's resolved. At the same time, he stubbornly mailed Alina her ring. The day she received the ring, Alina stayed in her room for a long time before finally putting it away in a drawer. Since returning from the hospital, Auntie Linda's condition had improved even more. She was full of energy every day and had even expanded the restaurant by taking over the adjacent storefront. When others advised her to rest, she would laugh heartily. I don't need rest. The doctor said I'm in great health. I need to work hard now to save up for Nanan's dowry. At times like these, Alina would pretend to be angry and then go and hug Auntie Linda's shoulders. She had finally learned how to be playful. To promote Auntie Linda's restaurant, Alina started posting videos of herself and Auntie Linda cooking on a short video platform a month ago, interspersing them with scenes of the fishing village's natural beauty. The dishes were home-style, the instructions detailed. She built a loyal fanbase and her following grew steadily. As Quentin would say, "Alina, you don't have time to be depressed anymore." Chapter 26. One day, Quentin came to the shop as usual. As he entered, Auntie Linda smiled at him, gesturing towards the back room with her eyes. He had been to this small courtyard many times. Alina's figure was always there. "Big bro Q, what are you doing here? I haven't finished cooking." "Alina, I'm leaving," Quentin said calmly. Alina was stunned. "Oh, are you going to another hospital? With your skills, many hospitals must want you." "I was here for a rural medical assistance program. My service period is over, and I have to go back." Quentin smiled and turned off the stove. He was very serious and gentle. "And you? Are you willing to come with me?" Quentin came from a family of doctors. He had always been cautious and self-disciplined, knowing what he wanted and staying away from what he shouldn't touch. But Alina had entered his life, making him feel for the first time that life could have variables. He looked at Alina. "The neighbors all say we're a good match. Auntie Linda thinks so too." Alina panicked. "No, don't believe their gossip. But I'm willing to believe it's true, Alina. I'm willing to believe it." Alina was stunned. She hadn't expected Quentin to be so direct. After a moment, Alina looked away. "Big bro Q, I'm sorry. Not even a chance." Alina fell silent. Quentin felt a little defeated. He blinked. "My bus is tomorrow morning. I hope you can see me off." Alina nodded firmly. "I'll definitely be there." Quentin had come and gone quickly. He had just wanted an answer. But unrequited love is a part of life, and he was never one to force things. Auntie Linda closed the door and walked over to Alina, sighing softly. "Well, that's that. Of the people I know, only 1.5 were good enough for my Nanan, and now that one is gone." Alina couldn't help but laugh. She suddenly remembered the half a person. She then gently leaned against Auntie Linda, who patted her head without saying a word. The next day, Alina woke up early to see Quentin off at the station. Accustomed to seeing him in a white coat, Quentin looked even younger and more energetic in his casual clothes. When Quentin saw Alina, his familiar smile returned. "Alina, over here," he waved. Alina slowly walked over to him, a hint of sadness at their parting in her heart. It was no exaggeration to say that Quentin had played an immeasurable role in her recovery from moderate depression. He had, in a way, given her a second life. But matters of the heart could not be forced. Quentin saw her daze and smiled. "Alina, there's no one to supervise your updates anymore. You have to think of your fans." Alina hesitated for only a moment before gently hugging him. She said, "Big bro Q, I know. Take care of yourself." For the past year, even a stoic person like Quentin had fantasized about this moment. But this affection was not the kind he wanted. He returned the hug, patting Alina's back. "Alina Smith, you deserve the best in the world. So, what I can't give you, I hope someone else can. You're so wonderful, you will surely have double the happiness." After seeing Quentin off, Alina slowly walked home alone. Just then her phone rang. It was Ethan. It was his first call in 3 months. On the phone, Ethan's voice was hoarse, as if filled with sand. It took him a while to get the words out. "Alina, your mother, passed away from cancer." Chapter 27. When Alina and Ethan arrived at the hospital room, the bed had already been remade, leaving no trace of her mother. Ethan looked at the pale face before him, feeling guilty. "I'm sorry, Alina, that I couldn't let you see your mother one last time." Hearing this, Alina slowly looked up. "Ethan, you knew my mother was sick, didn't you? Why didn't you tell me?" The more Alina spoke, the more agitated she became. She swung her fists, hitting Ethan's body with weak, uneven blows. Ethan pulled her into his arms, listening to her soft sobs, his heart feeling as if it were being twisted into a knot. "Shortly after I heard the news of you jumping into the sea, your mother was diagnosed with lung cancer, but she refused treatment. It wasn't until I told her you were still alive that her mood improved, but she insisted I not tell you about her illness. In the last 6 months, her health deteriorated. The few times I left the fishing village, it was to see her. I was planning to arrange for you two to meet after I finished the project at hand, but unfortunately. Just then, the nurse handling the death certificate came in. Who is the family of Helen Jo? Elena slowly raised her hand. I am her daughter. Oh, these are her belongings. Please accept my condolences. The person handed her a bag containing a few worn-out bank cards, a passbook, and a mobile phone. That night, Elena refused Ethan's offer to accompany her and went to her mother's place alone. The apartment was sparsely furnished but clean. Elena sat on the sofa and opened the bag with trembling hands. A few words were scrawled on the passbook. For Elena. With red eyes, Elena opened it. It was a fixed deposit of $5 million, enough for her to live comfortably for the rest of her life. This $5 million must have been part of the $10 million she had requested from Ethan. Her mother had returned nearly half of it and had barely touched the rest. Elena turned on her mother's phone. A few random apps littered the screen. She gently caressed the screen and accidentally touched the call interface. A long list of call records appeared, with only one name. My precious daughter. This number had been dialed almost every day, but there was never a response. The most recent call was yesterday, probably when her mother was near death. Her mother had called her precious daughter 5 times. Elena's eyes instantly turned red, and tears streamed down her face. How could she be so foolish? She knew this number wouldn't go through, so why did she keep calling? Why? Elena cried intermittently for a long time. When she was exhausted, she fell asleep on the sofa. She slept restlessly that night, dreaming of her mother. But this time, her mother was not the harsh, greedy person she knew. She was young and gentle, smiling and promising to take her to find her father, but she kept walking further and further away. Mom, Elena sat up with a start, drenched in a cold sweat. Before she could fully wake up, she felt a tremor from under the bed. When the second tremor hit, she was finally awake. An earthquake. She heard the sound of panicked footsteps and chaotic shouting outside, and she felt a sense of panic. Just then, there was an urgent knock on the door. She opened it to find a frowning Ethan. You need to come with me now. We're leaving this place. Elena was in a daze. It wasn't until she was in the car, driving out of the complex, that she finally came to her senses. She realized her hand had been held by Ethan the whole time, his palm sweaty. Ethan comforted her softly. It's okay now. If you're tired, you can go back to sleep. Ethan took a blanket from the side and covered her. She felt an immense sense of security and soon fell into a deep sleep. When she felt another violent tremor, Elena opened her eyes. Before she could react, she was pushed down by Ethan, the sound of falling rocks echoing in her ears. The driver in the front seat shouted in panic, "What do we do? The abandoned factory ahead is collapsing. We're in danger." The person shielding her didn't move an inch. He whispered in her ear, "Don't be afraid, Elena. I'm here." Smelling the familiar scent, tears streamed from the corners of Elena's eyes. Fortunately, the rest of the journey was uneventful. The driver carefully navigated around the rubble and reached the safety of the city. Ethan finally let out a sigh of relief, releasing Elena from his tight embrace and gently caressing her face. An hour later, they checked into a hotel in the city. Ethan booked 2 suites. After escorting Elena to her room, he handed a cup of warm milk to the motionless woman sitting on the sofa. You must have been terrified tonight. Drink some milk and get some sleep. After Ethan left, Elena mechanically washed up and went to bed, but she tossed and turned, unable to sleep. She opened her phone and searched for information about the earthquake. Her mind was filled with the image of Ethan resolutely shielding her when the factory was collapsing. She suddenly remembered the panic she felt when she learned of Auntie Linda's collapse, the pain of her mother's death. What if Ethan had been injured this time? How would she feel? Elena felt something inside her slowly disappearing. Chapter 28. Since the night of the earthquake, Elena hadn't seen Ethan. Some of the Scott Corporation's properties were affected by the earthquake, and Ethan was busy handling the aftermath, unable to get away. After arranging her mother's affairs, Elena placed her ashes in a cemetery, lit a stick of incense, and turned to leave. Unexpectedly, Arthur Scott was waiting for her outside the cemetery. The 2 times Elena had spoken directly with Arthur were both about money. Once was to save the mother who had given her life, and the other was for the child in her belly. Now, both were gone. Elena couldn't think of any reason for Arthur to see her. She walked over with a blank expression and said coldly, "Hello, Mr. Scott. What can I do for you?" "Eleanor, I know you have some resentment towards me. I didn't handle things well in the past. But if you still consider me an elder, please come with me somewhere." Eleanor was about to refuse, but seeing Arthur's wrinkled face and graying hair, she was reminded of her own mother and couldn't bring herself to say the harsh words. Arthur drove for about 20 minutes, and they arrived at a place that was incredibly familiar to Eleanor. The apartment she used to rent. Seeing Eleanor's confused expression, Arthur led her inside and explained. "After you disappeared, Ethan cut ties with the family. He bought this apartment and moved in. During that time, he drank every day, turning himself into a wreck. I had no choice but to come here to find him, and I began to understand how important you are to him." As Arthur spoke, he opened the door. Seeing the apartment's interior, Eleanor was speechless. The living room and bedroom had been combined into one large space. The 4 large white walls were covered with photos and various objects, all related to her. On the east wall, framed in plastic, were yellowed papers with red text all the awards she had won in school. Near the ceiling, a nail had been driven into the wall, from which hung 2 yellowed cloth bags containing medals and badges, some exquisitely made, others crude, all from extracurricular activities she had participated in. There were also a few scattered photos, probably from elementary school. The photos had faded, but the little Eleanor in them was smiling proudly and brightly, a hint of the adult Eleanor visible. The other 2 walls were covered with a dense array of photos. There were photos of her and Ethan from their college days, and photos of Eleanor cooking in the fishing village. "Ethan got all these old things from your mother. I don't know how he found some of these photos, but he treasures them. He won't even let me touch them." Arthur paused, looking at the woman whose eyes were already red. "Eleanor, I didn't bring you here today to ask for forgiveness. The Scott family has wronged you. I just wanted you to know Ethan's feelings. The final choice is yours." Eleanor didn't know how she left the apartment. Ever since Ethan came to the fishing village to find her, a sense of unreality had lingered. She had never truly believed in his sincerity, always afraid that if she softened, she would fall into an abyss of despair. But after everything that had happened, Eleanor began to waver. Just then, her phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was Ethan. His voice was urgent and nervous. "Eleanor, did my father come to see you? What did he say to you? Where are you now? I'm coming over right away." Eleanor gave a helpless smile and set her location to a nearby coffee shop. In less than 15 minutes, Ethan arrived, his face flushed unnaturally. "Eleanor, are you okay? I didn't know he would come to see you. What's wrong?" Eleanor's relaxed expression suddenly became serious. She watched as Ethan's nose began to bleed. Forgetting everything else, Eleanor reached out and touched Ethan's forehead. It was burning hot. She quickly took him to the hospital. At the hospital, after a consultation, the doctor ordered a routine blood test. While they waited, Eleanor stared at her phone, her expression turning ice cold. Ethan finally realized something was wrong. When Eleanor went to the restroom, he unlocked her phone. 3:14, the day Eleanor was rescued from the sea. The phone screen was still on the search page. What are the symptoms of leukemia? Is a nosebleed always a sign of leukemia? What is a normal platelet count? Ethan turned off the phone and sat there quietly, his thoughts a blur. When the report came out, Eleanor went to get it. She flipped straight to the end to see the results. When she saw the word normal, she let out a long sigh of relief. Ethan saw her reaction and knew the result. He smiled faintly. "The weather in Hucheng has been dry lately, and there's a lot to deal with at the company, so my immunity is a bit low. Why do you always scare yourself like this? You." Before he could finish, he saw Eleanor turn away. But she was a moment too slow. Ethan saw a single tear fall onto the paper. His heart jolted. Was Eleanor crying for him? Before he could react, Eleanor wiped her eyes, turned around, and hugged him. At that moment, Ethan searched his mind for all the words he knew, but found that none could express even a fraction of his overwhelming emotions. He wished he could take out his heart and show it to her, piece by piece. Ethan felt her warmth, remembered all that had happened, and his voice grew choked. "This past year, have you ever thought of me?" Eleanor nodded, then raised her right hand. The small flower ring was on her ring finger. "Ethan, I've finally waited for you to fall in love with me again." Ethan's breath caught. He was ecstatic. All his anxieties and insecurities vanished in that instant. He hugged Alina tightly, and she hugged him back. Life is a vast ocean, with mountains and rivers to cross, but in the end, it's just this. You have to give love a chance, give yourself a chance to be loved.